And welcome back to the OU season breakdown for the 2012 edition of Oklahoma Sooner football. This is the 8th game of the season and the 77th meeting between these two Big 12 schools, the University of Oklahoma, OU, and the Cyclones out of Iowa State. Iowa State went to a bowl game last year where they played in the first ever Pinstripe Bowl game. It's played at the new Yankee Stadium. They played the University of Rutgers and lost the game 27-13 at the new Yankees Stadium. Leading the Clones once again this year is Paul Rhodes. He's 18-20 as a head coach, all at Iowa State. Their graduated player that they will miss this year is Darius Reynolds. Reynolds had 43 catches, 695 yards, and 7 touchdowns last year, his senior year on campus. As far as the current players for, and also last year they averaged 22.7 points a ball game. Presently, Paul Rhodes has these guys on campus and ready to go. They have 2 quarterbacks. I really think, though, that the starter will end up being Jared Bennett because he can get out there and run a little bit more than their other quarterback. So that's quarterback Jared Bennett, threw for 1,201 yards, 104 carries for 53 yards, and 7 total touchdowns last year. His running back helping him out will be James White. He had 159 carries for 819 yards and 8 touchdowns. And Josh Lenz is their receiver returning. He had 39 catches for 510 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. Their defensive player returning, I'm pretty sure Sooner fans and all Big 12 fans are going to have to remember this guy by the end, A.J. Klein. A.J. last year had 116 tackles and an interception in their final meeting against Missouri. That interception was for 78 yards. Their kicker is Grant Mahoney. Last year, Grant was 1 for 4, 25%. His only make, which would be his longest, was 54 yards against Iowa in Ames. Their punter, Kirk Vanderkamp, he returns. He had 68 punts last year, averaged 42.7 a ball game, and had a 67 long at Baylor. This is going to be a tough month for Oklahoma. Coming into this month, it was pretty much set up for what's to come. It's going to be interesting to find out how Oklahoma ends this streak. They'll play this team against Iowa. They'll have a revenge game against Baylor. They'll head out to West Virginia. They'll head home to play Oklahoma State in another revenge game before heading to TCU for that match. So, of the games, this is kind of the easy game on the road. I say that, but this is the same team that upset Nebraska a couple of years ago. They upset Texas in Austin. Now, I understand that upsetting Texas in Austin the last 2 or 3 years isn't very impressive, but they still did it. And then, of course, last year they crushed the BCS door. The BCS playoff system, which I have not broken down yet, came into realization because practically of this game, Iowa State hosting Oklahoma State in a double overtime victory over OSU. Iowa State, of course, ended up going to a bowl because of that game when they only won 2 other Big 12 games. This is an Iowa State team, like I said, that last year in Ames lost to Texas and Texas A&M. Other than those 2 losses, they won their games in Ames, including an upset win over OSU. At that time, a lot of people thought that if they won that game, they'd play us for the right to play, and if they beat us, they would have a right to play for the national championship. Of course, OSU ended up losing the game to Iowa, but ended up beating us, as I said, because of the revenge game factor. And so that really, if it wasn't for this game against Iowa State against Oklahoma State in Ames, if it weren't for that game, OSU would have probably either faced LSU or Alabama. Probably Alabama because of the way that Alabama won the SEC championship. But, of course, we all know that's not the way that it happened. They ended up playing LSU. That ended up really... I guess LSU won the SEC. I'm sorry about that. So they would have played LSU in the national championship. Instead, it ended up being Alabama in the national championship. And 2 teams from the same conference really doesn't work out too well, particularly from that conference. But you weren't too surprised that it was from that conference, because that conference has been so BCS dominant since really you can go back to when they played us in 2004, because we got to remember they're in 2005. They should have had a team in Auburn that should have played in that national championship. Of course, the next year, LSU goes and throttles Ohio State. And then after that, well, basically, instead of the BCS, it's just be called the SEC BCS, because the SEC had dominated all the rest of the national championships. Auburn got their national championship, of course. Alabama got their national championship. LSU, Florida got a national championship. Alabama got not 1 but 2 national championships. Of course, one over Texas and one over LSU. 2 of the more proud programs in college football history. And I couldn't be more happy that they got those 2 wins for Alabama. Just because of the way that the LSU and the Texas teams kind of present themselves. The next game that I will break down will be the Baylor game. They're going to have a lot to prove. Of course, their key player is gone, so we'll see what they have coming back. And Oklahoma will try to get revenge over Baylor. That's going to be the next game I'm going to break down. Until then, everyone, have a great Boomer Sooner night. This has been Harry James Taylor. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will, as always, Boomer Sooner, Sooner Nation.